Martha Holloway had spent 23 years perfecting the art of being invisible, useful, dependable, but never chosen. Then Caleb Thornton walked into her family's store and didn't ask for her beautiful sister. He asked for her. What followed wasn't a gentle courtship. It was a collision that would force an entire town to question what they thought they knew about worth, beauty, and the quiet strength of a woman who'd been overlooked her whole life. By the time Caleb made his move on the night of the spring dance, Martha faced a choice that would either shatter her or remake her completely. If you're ready to see what happens when someone refuses to stay invisible, stick with me until the end. And hey, hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The bell above the door chimed, and Martha didn't look up. She was elbow deep in a crate of canned peaches, counting inventory the way she always did. Methodical, careful, making sure every number lined up before she wrote it down. The store smelled like sawdust and tobacco and the faint sweetness of dried apples hanging in burlap sacks near the counter. Outside, Copper Valley baked under the Nevada sun, the kind of heat that made the air shimmer and turned every surface too hot to touch. "Martha, could you help me with this?" Her sister's voice drifted from the front of the store, light and musical. Martha straightened, wiping her hands on her apron, and walked toward the counter where Lily stood, holding up a bolt of blue calico like she was presenting a prize. "What do you think?" Lily asked, tilting her head. Sunlight streamed through the window and caught in her hair, turning it gold. "For the spring dance?" Martha glanced at the fabric. "It's nice. Just nice." Lily's mouth curved into a pout. "Come on, Martha. Tell me the truth. It'll look good on you." Martha turned back toward the crate. "Everything does." It wasn't bitterness in her voice, just fact. Lily was the kind of beautiful that stopped conversations. Delicate features, bright eyes, a laugh that made men lean closer. At 19, she'd already turned down 3 marriage proposals, each one delivered with flowers or poorly written poetry, or in one memorable case, a live chicken. Martha, on the other hand, had never been proposed to at all. She didn't mind. Or at least she'd learned not to mind. At 23, she'd settled into her role the way a key settles into a well-worn lock. She ran the store, kept the books, managed the orders. She was good with numbers, good with logistics, good at the kind of practical work that kept things running. People came to her when they needed change counted, or a difficult customer handled, or advice on which grain lasted longest in storage. They came to Lily when they wanted to flirt. "I think I'll get it," Lily said, folding the fabric with care. "Mr. Brennan said he'd save me a dance. That's the 3rd man this week. I can't help it if they ask." Lily's smile was untroubled. "Besides, you could come too. You never do." Martha pulled another can from the crate. "Someone has to mind the store. Papa's got enough on his plate." Their father had been running the Holloway General Store for 30 years, but his hands shook now when he tried to write, and his memory had started slipping. Most days he sat in the back room, smoking his pipe, and telling stories to whoever would listen. The actual running of the place had fallen to Martha 2 years ago, and she'd accepted it without complaint. Lily sighed, but she didn't push. She knew better. Instead, she gathered the fabric and disappeared into the back to wrap it, humming something soft and tuneless. Martha finished the peaches and moved on to the flour sacks, checking for weevils. It was tedious work, the kind that let her mind wander. She thought about the account books, about the shipment due in from Carson City, about whether she should reorder the lamp oil or wait another week. She didn't think about the spring dance. She didn't think about the fact that no one had ever asked her to dance, not once in all the years the town had held the event. She didn't think about how sometimes, late at night when the store was quiet, she felt a hollowness in her chest that no amount of work could fill. The bell chimed again. This time Martha looked up. The man in the doorway was tall, taller than most men she knew, and he carried himself with a kind of easy confidence that suggested he was used to being noticed. He wore a dark coat despite the heat, and his boots were dusty from travel. His face was weathered, sun-darkened, with a strong jaw and eyes that swept the store like he was cataloging everything in it. "Help you?" Martha asked. He stepped inside and the floorboards creaked under his weight. "Looking for supplies. Heading out to a cattle operation west of here." Martha nodded and gestured toward the shelves. "Depends on what you need." "Rope, beans, coffee, ammunition." He moved closer, and Martha caught the faint smell of leather and horse sweat. Enough for 3 men, 2 weeks. She pulled a ledger from beneath the counter and flipped it open. I can put that together. Give me 20 minutes. Appreciate it. He leaned against the counter, his gaze drifting around the store before settling back on her. You run this place? More or less. Young for that. Martha shrugged. My father owns it. I manage it. Must keep you busy. Busy enough? He nodded slowly, and there was something in his expression. Curiosity, maybe, or appraisal. Martha didn't let herself read too much into it. Men looked at her sometimes, but it was always the same look. Practical, evaluating, like they were measuring her for a job, not a life. Name's Caleb Thornton, he said after a moment. Martha Holloway. Pleasure. She didn't answer, just started pulling items from the shelves. Coiled rope, burlap sacks of beans, tins of coffee. She worked efficiently, stacking everything on the counter in neat piles while Caleb watched. You know the area well? He asked. Well enough. Any advice for someone setting up a cattle operation? Martha paused, glancing at him. You asking me or just making conversation? A flicker of amusement crossed his face. Both. She considered for a moment, then said, Water's tricky out west. You'll want to survey before you commit to grazing land. And watch for rustlers. There's been trouble the last few months. Noted. He tilted his head slightly. You always this direct? You want me to lie? No. His smile widened just a fraction. I like it. Martha turned back to the supplies, ignoring the faint warmth that crept up her neck. She wasn't used to being complimented, and she didn't quite know what to do with it. So she did what she always did, kept working. Lily emerged from the back room, and the atmosphere shifted instantly. She stopped when she saw Caleb, her eyes widening slightly. Then she smiled, the kind of smile that could melt iron, and crossed to the counter. Hello, she said, her voice soft and warm. I'm Lily, Martha's sister. Caleb straightened, and for a moment Martha braced herself for the inevitable. This was how it always went. Men saw Lily and forgot anyone else existed, but Caleb just nodded politely. Caleb Thornton. Are you new to Copper Valley? Lily asked, leaning slightly against the counter in a way that made her look smaller, more delicate. Passing through, Caleb said, setting up a ranch west of town. How exciting! Lily's eyes sparkled. We don't get many newcomers. You'll have to come to the spring dance next week. Everyone will be there. Maybe. Lily tilted her head, still smiling. You should. It's the event of the season. Martha finished tallying the supplies and slid the paper across the counter. Comes to $14. Caleb glanced at the total, then pulled a billfold from his coat and counted out the money. His fingers brushed hers when he handed it over, and Martha pulled back quickly, folding the bills and tucking them into the register. Appreciate the help, Caleb said. Sure. He gathered the supplies, balancing them with the ease of someone used to physical work, and headed for the door. But before he left, he glanced back at Martha. Thanks for the advice, he said. And then he was gone. Lily watched him go, then turned to Martha with a gleeful grin. Did you see him? Hard to miss. He's handsome, Lily said, drawing the word out. And polite. Do you think he'll come to the dance? Martha closed the register. No idea. I hope he does. Lily sighed dreamily. Imagine dancing with someone like that. Martha didn't answer. She picked up the ledger and carried it to the back room, where her father sat dozing in his chair. She set the book on the desk and stared at the numbers. But for once, they didn't hold her attention. She kept thinking about the way Caleb had looked at her. Not dismissive, not evaluating, just seeing. It didn't mean anything, she told herself. Men were polite sometimes. It was just manners, but the warmth in her neck hadn't quite faded. The next 3 days passed in their usual rhythm. Martha opened the store at dawn, swept the floors, restocked the shelves, handled the customers who drifted in and out throughout the day. Lily helped when she felt like it, but mostly she spent her time sewing the blue calico into a dress, chattering about the upcoming dance, and speculating about who would ask her to waltz. Martha listened with half an ear, her mind on other things, an overdue shipment, a customer who'd run up too much credit, the roof that needed patching before the next rain. On the 4th day, Caleb came back. It was late afternoon and the store was quiet. Martha was restocking the shelves near the back when the bell chimed. She turned, expecting Mrs. Callahan or one of the ranch hands, and found Caleb instead. He carried a canvas sack slung over one shoulder, and he looked different. Cleaner, maybe, like he'd taken the time to wash the trail dust off. His coat was unbuttoned, and his shirt sleeves were rolled to his elbows. "Afternoon," he said. Martha straightened, brushing her hands on her apron. "Need more supplies already?" "No." He set the sack on the counter. "Actually, I brought something." She walked over, frowning. "What is it?" "Coffee beans, fresh roasted. Figured you might want to try them before I place a standing order." Martha blinked. "You're giving me coffee?" "Call it a sample." He opened the sack and the rich, dark smell filled the store. "Got a contact in San Francisco who imports them. Thought they might sell well here." She stared at the beans, then at him. "You want to sell through the store? If the quality's good." He leaned against the counter, his posture relaxed. "But I wanted your opinion first." "Why mine? You run the place, don't you?" Martha didn't know what to say to that. Men didn't usually ask her opinion on business. They assumed her father made the decisions, even though he hadn't been sharp enough for that in months. "I'll try them," she said finally. "Good." Caleb smiled, and it was the kind of smile that reached his eyes. "Let me know what you think." He stayed for a while after that, leaning against the counter and asking questions about the store, about the town, about the challenges of running a business in a place as remote as Copper Valley. Martha answered cautiously at first, waiting for him to lose interest or shift his attention to Lily, who was visible through the window, hanging laundry in the yard. But he didn't. He kept his focus on Martha, nodding at her answers, asking follow-up questions, treating her words like they mattered. It was unsettling. "You've been doing this a long time?" he asked. 2 years since I took over full-time," Martha said, "but I've been helping since I was a kid. Must have been a lot to learn." "It's just logistics, not that complicated." "I don't know about that." Caleb tilted his head. "Keeping a store stocked, managing credit, handling difficult customers. That takes a certain kind of skill." Martha felt that warmth creeping back into her neck. "It's just what needs doing." Still, he held her gaze for a moment longer than was strictly necessary. Not everyone could do it. The bell chimed and Mrs. Callahan shuffled in, breaking the moment. Martha turned to help her, grateful for the distraction, and Caleb took that as his cue to leave. "Let me know about the coffee," he said on his way out. "I will." After he was gone, Mrs. Callahan peered at Martha over her spectacles. "Who was that?" "Caleb Thornton. He's starting a ranch west of town." "Handsome fellow." Martha didn't answer. Mrs. Callahan chuckled. "Don't pretend you didn't notice, girl. You're not blind." "I noticed," Martha said quietly. "Doesn't mean anything." "Maybe not." Mrs. Callahan picked up a tin of peaches and examined it. "But he sure seemed interested in talking to you." Martha handed her the change and said nothing. But later that night, when the store was closed and the house was quiet, she ground some of Caleb's coffee beans and brewed a pot. The smell filled the kitchen, rich and complex, and when she took a sip, she closed her eyes. It was good, better than good, and for just a moment she let herself imagine what it might be like if Caleb came back again. He did. Over the next week, Caleb visited the store 4 more times. He always had a reason, needed nails, wanted to check on an order, had a question about local suppliers, but the reasons felt thin, like excuses. Each time, he stayed longer than necessary. He asked Martha about her day, about the store, about her thoughts on everything from the best grain for winter storage to the reliability of the stagecoach schedule. He listened when she answered, his attention steady and unwavering. And each time, Lily tried to insert herself into the conversation. She'd appear from the back room with a bright smile, asking Caleb if he'd decided to come to the dance, complimenting his coat, or his horse, or his voice. She wasn't subtle about it, and Martha waited for the inevitable, for Caleb to turn his attention toward her sister the way every other man did. But he never did. He was polite to Lily, always, but his focus stayed on Martha. "Do you think he's interested?" Lily asked one evening as they closed up the store. Martha glanced at her. "In what?" "In me." Lily's tone was uncertain, which was rare for her. "He's always here, but he barely talks to me." "Maybe he's just here for supplies." Lily frowned. "No one needs that many supplies." Martha didn't answer. She didn't know what to say. Part of her wanted to believe that Caleb's visits meant something, but the larger part, the part that had spent 23 years learning not to hope, told her she was being ridiculous. Men didn't choose women like her. Not when women like Lily existed. But then the night before the spring dance, everything shifted. Martha was locking up the store when she heard footsteps behind her. She turned and found Caleb standing in the street, his hands in his pockets, looking almost nervous. "You're here late," she said. "Had something I needed to say." He stepped closer, and the lamplight from the store window caught the angles of his face. "Can we talk?" Martha's heart kicked against her ribs. "About what?" "You." She froze. "Me?" Caleb exhaled slowly, like he was gathering his thoughts. "I know I've been coming around a lot, and I know the whole town's probably noticed, but I need you to understand something, Martha." "Understand what?" He met her eyes, and there was no hesitation in his gaze. "It was never about the store, or the supplies, or any of that." Martha's throat went dry. "Then what?" "It was about you," Caleb said simply. "From the first time I walked in here, it was about you." She stared at him, her mind scrambling for a response, but all she could manage was, "Why? Why?" He laughed softly, shaking his head. "Because you're honest. Because you don't waste time pretending to be something you're not. Because when I ask you a question, you give me a real answer, not the one you think I want to hear." Martha's hands clenched at her sides. "Caleb, I'm not done." He stepped closer, close enough that she could see the faint scar above his left eyebrow. "You're the smartest person in this town, and you don't even know it. You run that store better than most men could, and you do it without making a fuss. You're strong, and you're real, and I've spent the last 2 weeks trying to figure out how to tell you that." Her breath caught. "Tell me what?" "That I want you," Caleb said, his voice low and steady. "Not your sister. Not anyone else. You." The world seemed to tilt. Martha opened her mouth, but no sound came out. She felt like someone had reached into her chest and rearranged everything inside her, and she didn't know if she wanted to laugh or cry or run. "I don't—" She swallowed hard. "I don't understand." "What's not to understand?" "You could have anyone," Martha said, her voice shaking. Lily's beautiful," Caleb interrupted. "I'm not blind, but she's not you." "But I'm—" She gestured helplessly at herself. "I'm just me." "Yeah." Caleb's expression softened. "You are." Martha shook her head, her chest tight. "You don't know what you're saying." "I know exactly what I'm saying." He reached out and his fingers brushed hers, light, tentative. "And tomorrow night, I'm going to that dance, and I'm going to ask you to dance with me. In front of the whole town." Her pulse hammered. "Caleb, you don't have to answer now," he said quietly. "But I wanted you to know, so you can think about it. And so you know that when I walk into that hall tomorrow, it's not your sister I'll be looking for." He stepped back, his hand falling away, and for a moment they just stood there in the lamplight, the silence stretching between them. Then Caleb tipped his hat. "Good night, Martha." And he walked away, leaving her standing alone in the street, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. She didn't move for a long time. When she finally went inside, Lily was waiting in the kitchen, her dress laid out on the table. "Was that Caleb?" Lily asked. Martha nodded, still dazed. "What did he want?" Martha looked at her sister, her beautiful, radiant sister, and for the first time in her life, she didn't know how to answer. "I don't know," she said finally, but that was a lie. She knew exactly what he wanted, and she had no idea what to do about it. Martha barely slept that night. She lay in her narrow bed, staring at the ceiling while the house creaked and settled around her. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Caleb's face in the lamplight, heard his voice saying those impossible words. "It was about you. From the first time I walked in here, it was about you." She rolled onto her side, pulling the quilt up to her chin. Her room was small and plain, a bed, a dresser, a single window that looked out over the street. She'd never bothered decorating it. What was the point? No one ever saw it but her. Through the thin wall, she could hear Lily humming softly, probably admiring her new dress in the mirror. Lily had tried asking more questions after Caleb left, but Martha had pleaded exhaustion and escaped to her room. She couldn't talk about it. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Because talking about it would make it real. And if it was real, then she'd have to face the terrifying possibility that Caleb Thornton actually meant what he said. And if he meant it, then tomorrow night at the dance, the entire town would see. Martha pressed her face into the pillow and tried not to think about the stares, the whispers, the questions. Copper Valley was small enough that everyone knew everyone else's business, and a man like Caleb choosing a woman like her would be the kind of gossip that lasted for months. She could already hear Mrs. Callahan's voice, syrupy with false sweetness. Well, isn't that something? Martha Holloway and that handsome cattleman. Who would have thought? Who would have thought? That was the problem, wasn't it? No one would have thought, including Martha herself. She finally drifted off sometime past midnight, her dreams tangled and anxious, and woke to gray dawn light filtering through the window. For a few seconds, she lay still, disoriented, and then the memory of the previous night crashed back over her. Caleb. The dance. His hand brushing hers. Martha sat up, her heart already racing. Downstairs, she could hear her father moving around in the kitchen, the clatter of the coffee pot, the scrape of a chair. She dressed quickly, braiding her hair with practiced efficiency, and made her way down. Her father sat at the table, a cup of coffee steaming in front of him. He looked up when she entered, his weathered face creasing into a smile. "Morning, sweetheart." "Morning, Papa." She poured herself a cup and sat across from him. For a while, neither of them spoke. Her father had always been comfortable with silence, and Martha had inherited that from him. But today, the quiet felt heavy, like it was waiting for something. "You going to the dance tonight?" her father asked finally. Martha's hand tightened around her cup. "I don't know." "Lily's excited about it." "Lily's always excited about dances," her father chuckled. "True enough." He took a sip of his coffee, studying her over the rim of the cup. "What about you?" "What about me?" "You never go." Martha shrugged. "Someone needs to stay home." "I could stay home." "Papa." "I'm not an invalid, Martha." His tone was gentle but firm. "And you're not a nun. You're allowed to have a little fun." She looked down at her coffee. "I don't really like dances." "Or you don't think anyone would want to dance with you?" The words hit harder than they should have. Martha's throat tightened and she forced herself to keep her voice steady. "Does it matter?" Her father sighed. "You're too hard on yourself." "I'm realistic." "You're scared." Martha's head snapped up. Her father met her gaze, his expression kind but unyielding. "You think I don't see it?" he said quietly. "You've spent so much time convincing yourself you don't deserve anything good that now you can't even recognize it when it shows up." "Papa, I don't—" "The Thornton fellow's been coming around a lot." Martha went still. Her father leaned back in his chair. "Lily told me. Said he's always asking for you, not her. That true?" He asks questions about the store." "Uh-huh." Her father's mouth twitched. "And last night? He just wanted to talk." "About the store." Martha didn't answer. Her father reached across the table and covered her hand with his. His skin was papery, his grip weaker than it used to be, but the gesture was steady. "Sweetheart," he said, "you've been running this store, running this house, running yourself ragged, trying to hold everything together, and you've done it without complaint, but you don't have to carry everything alone. I know that. Do you?" He squeezed her hand. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've forgotten you're allowed to want things, to let someone see you." Martha's vision blurred and she blinked hard. "What if he changes his mind?" "Then he's a fool." Her father's voice was fierce. "But you won't know unless you give him the chance." She pulled her hand back, wiping at her eyes. "I don't know if I can." "You're braver than you think." "I'm not brave, Papa. I'm just—" "You are," he interrupted. "You've been brave your whole life. You just never called it that." Martha didn't trust herself to speak. She stood, carrying her cup to the sink, and stared out the window at the empty street. The sun was rising, painting the storefronts in shades of gold and amber, and somewhere out there, Caleb Thornton was probably waking up too, preparing for the day, maybe even thinking about tonight. About her. The thought made her chest ache. "Go to the dance," her father said behind her. "See what happens." Martha didn't turn around. "And if it's a disaster? Then you come home and we'll have coffee and the world will keep turning." He paused. "But what if it's not?" She closed her eyes, her hands gripping the edge of the sink. What if it's not? The morning passed in a blur of customers and chores. Martha threw herself into the work, trying to keep her mind occupied. But it didn't help. Every time the bell chimed, her heart jumped, half expecting Caleb to walk through the door. He didn't. By noon, Lily had worked herself into a state of nervous excitement, flitting around the house like a hummingbird. She'd tried on her dress 3 times already, adjusting the fit, changing her hair, debating whether to add ribbons or leave it plain. "What do you think?" she asked, twirling in front of Martha. "Too much?" Martha glanced up from the account books. "It's fine." "Fine?" Lily's face fell. "Just fine?" "It's beautiful, Lily. You look beautiful. You always do." Lily bit her lip, her excitement dimming. Are you upset with me?" "No." "You seem upset." Martha set down her pen. "I'm not upset." "Then what's wrong?" "Nothing." Lily crossed her arms, her expression shifting from uncertain to stubborn. "You're lying." "I'm not." "Yes, you are." Lily sat down across from her, her voice softening. "Martha, talk to me. What's going on?" Martha stared at the ledger, the numbers blurring together. She didn't know how to explain it, the confusion, the fear, the fragile, terrifying hope that kept threatening to crack her open. "Caleb asked me to dance," she said finally. Lily blinked. "What?" "Last night. He told me he's coming to the dance and he's going to ask me." For a long moment, Lily just stared at her. Then, slowly, a smile spread across her face. "Martha, that's wonderful." "Is it?" "Of course it is." Lily leaned forward, her eyes bright. "He likes you. I mean, I noticed he was always talking to you, but I thought maybe he was just being polite. But if he actually asked—" "He didn't ask," Martha interrupted. "He told me, like it was already decided." Lily frowned. "And that bothers you?" "I don't know." Martha rubbed her temples. "Maybe. I don't understand why." "Why what?" "Why me?" Martha looked at her sister and the words came out raw and unfiltered. "You're sitting right there, Lily. You're everything men want, and he barely even looks at you." Lily's expression softened. "Martha, it doesn't make sense." "Maybe it doesn't have to." Lily reached across the table and took her hand. "Maybe he just sees something in you that you don't see in yourself." Martha's throat tightened. "What if I'm not what he thinks I am?" "Then he'll find out, and you'll deal with it." Lily squeezed her hand. "But what if you are? What if you're exactly what he's looking for, and you're too scared to believe it?" Martha pulled her hand back, standing abruptly. "I need to finish the inventory." "Martha." "I'm fine, Lily. Really." But she wasn't fine. She was terrified. Ban. By late afternoon, the town was buzzing with preparations for the dance. The community hall had been swept and decorated, lanterns strung up along the rafters, tables set out for food and drink. Martha watched from the store window as people hurried past, their arms full of pies and casseroles, their voices bright with anticipation. She should have been excited, or at least curious. Instead, she felt like she was standing on the edge of a cliff and someone had just told her to jump. At 5 o'clock, she closed the store and went upstairs to change. Her wardrobe was sparse, mostly practical dresses in browns and grays, nothing fancy, nothing designed to draw attention. She stood in front of it for a long time, staring at the options, and finally pulled out a dark green dress she'd made 2 years ago and never worn. It wasn't much. Plain cotton, high-necked, with long sleeves and a fitted waist. But it was clean, and it fit, and it was the closest thing she had to something nice. She changed quickly, braided her hair, and stared at herself in the small mirror above her dresser. She looked fine, neat, unremarkable, exactly like herself. Downstairs, Lily was already dressed, her blue calico glowing in the lamplight. She looked like something out of a painting, delicate and radiant. And when she saw Martha, her face lit up. "You look lovely," Lily said. "I look plain." "You look like you." Lily adjusted Martha's collar, her touch gentle. "And that's enough." Martha wanted to believe her. She really did. But when they stepped outside and started walking toward the hall, All she could think about was how many people would be watching, how many whispers would follow her across the room, how exposed she'd feel standing next to Lily while Caleb, if he even showed up. Maybe he'd changed his mind. Maybe the whole thing had been some kind of impulse, and by now he'd come to his senses and realized what a mistake it would be to choose someone like her. The thought should have been a relief. Instead, it made her chest ache. The community hall was already packed when they arrived. Music spilled out through the open doors, a fiddle and a guitar playing something fast and lively, and the air smelled like roasted meat and sweet cider. People milled around in clusters, laughing and talking, their faces flushed with warmth and alcohol. Martha hesitated at the entrance, but Lily grabbed her hand and pulled her inside. "Come on," Lily said. "Let's find a good spot." They wove through the crowd, and Martha felt the weight of every gaze that landed on her. Mrs. Callahan whispered something to her neighbor. Mr. Brennan tipped his hat with a knowing smile. Even the younger girls, the ones who usually ignored her, stared with open curiosity. They knew. Somehow, they all knew. Lily found a spot near the refreshment table and handed Martha a cup of cider. "Relax," she said. "You look like you're about to face a firing squad." "I feel like I am." "It's just a dance." "It's not just a dance." Lily opened her mouth to respond, but then her eyes widened, and Martha followed her gaze. Caleb had just walked in. He stood in the doorway, his coat unbuttoned, his hat in his hands, and for a moment the noise in the hall seemed to dim. He scanned the room, his expression calm and unhurried, and then his eyes found Martha. He didn't smile, didn't wave. He just looked at her, and the world narrowed to that single point of connection. Martha's breath caught, and then Caleb started walking toward her. The crowd parted without him having to say a word. People turned to watch, their conversations stuttering to a halt. And by the time he reached her, the entire hall had gone quiet. Caleb stopped a few feet away, his gaze steady. "Evening, Martha." Her mouth was dry. "Evening. You came." Yes." "Good." He glanced at Lily, nodding politely. "Lily." "Mr. Thornton," Lily said, her voice barely above a whisper. Then Caleb turned back to Martha and held out his hand. "Dance with me." It wasn't a question. Martha stared at his hand, her heart hammering so hard she thought everyone in the room must be able to hear it. Around them, the silence stretched, thick and expectant. She could say no. She could turn around and walk out, and no one would blame her. But then she thought about her father's words. "You're braver than you think." And she thought about Caleb standing in the street last night, his voice steady and sure. "It was about you." Slowly, she reached out and placed her hand in his. Caleb's fingers closed around hers, warm and solid, and he led her onto the dance floor. The fiddler started playing, something slower this time, softer, and Caleb pulled her close, one hand at her waist, the other holding hers. For a moment, Martha forgot how to breathe. "You all right?" Caleb asked quietly. "I don't know. Nervous?" "Terrified." His mouth twitched. "Of me?" "Of this." She glanced around at the watching faces. "Of them." "Let them watch." Caleb's hand tightened slightly at her waist. "I don't care what they think." "Easy for you to say." "Is it?" He met her eyes. "You think I don't know what they're all thinking? That I could have had your sister or any other woman in this room, and I chose you instead?" Martha flinched. "You don't have to—" "I'm not trying to hurt you," Caleb said. "I'm trying to tell you that I know what this looks like, and I'm doing it anyway." "Why?" "Because I told you the truth last night." His voice was low, meant only for her. "And I meant every word." Martha's chest tightened, and she looked away, blinking hard. I'm not what you think I am." "What do I think you are?" "I don't know. Someone worth this." Caleb was quiet for a moment, and then he said, "You know what I see when I look at you?" "What?" "Someone who doesn't quit. Someone who takes care of the people around her without asking for anything in return. Someone who's honest, even when it's hard. Someone who knows her own mind and doesn't apologize for it." He paused. "That's what I see. And if you can't see it yet, then maybe I'll just have to keep showing you until you do." Martha's vision blurred, and she blinked hard, trying to hold herself together. Around them, the music swelled and other couples joined the dance floor, the moment softening into something less exposed. But Martha barely noticed. All she could feel was Caleb's hand at her waist, steady and sure, and the quiet certainty in his voice. "I don't know how to do this," she whispered. "Do what?" "Let someone see me. You're doing it right now. I'm scared." "I know." Caleb's thumb brushed against her hand, a small, grounding touch. "But I'm not going anywhere." They danced in silence after that, and slowly, the tightness in Martha's chest began to ease. Not completely. She was still acutely aware of the stares, the whispers, the weight of expectation pressing down on her. But Caleb's presence was solid, unshakable, and for the first time in a long time, she let herself lean into it. When the song ended, Caleb stepped back, but he didn't let go of her hand. "Walk with me?" he asked. Martha nodded, and he led her outside, away from the noise and the heat and the prying eyes. The night air was cool and clear, the sky scattered with stars. They walked in silence down the dusty street, past the darkened storefronts, until they reached the edge of town where the buildings gave way to open land. Caleb stopped and turned to face her. "I need to ask you something." Martha's pulse quickened. "What? Do you trust me?" She hesitated. "I don't know you." "Fair." He tilted his head. "But do you think you could, given time?" "Maybe." She wrapped her arms around herself. "Why does it matter?" "Because I'm not just asking you to dance, Martha." Caleb's expression was serious, almost grave. "I'm asking for more than that." Her breath caught. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I want to court you, properly. And I want the whole town to know it." Martha's mind went blank. "You... what?" "I know it's fast," Caleb said, "and I know you've got reasons to doubt me. But I'm not a man who does things halfway. And if I'm going to do this, I want to do it right." "Caleb, you can't..." "Why not?" "Because people will talk." "Let them." "Because you barely know me." "Then let me get to know you." "Because I'm not..." She broke off, her voice shaking. "I'm not the kind of woman men court." Caleb stepped closer, his gaze intense. "Says who?" "Everyone. The whole town. Me." "Well, you're wrong." His voice was firm. "And so are they." Martha shook her head, tears stinging her eyes. "You don't understand." "Then help me understand. I've spent my whole life being the practical one, the dependable one, the one who keeps things running while everyone else gets to be seen. And I made peace with that, Caleb. I stopped hoping for anything else. And now you're standing here telling me I was wrong, and I don't know what to do with that." Caleb was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached out and gently tilted her chin up, forcing her to meet his eyes. "You don't have to do anything," he said quietly, "except decide if you want to try. That's all I'm asking. Not for you to be something you're not. Not for you to change. Just give me a chance to show you what I see." Martha's breath hitched. "And if I can't believe it, then I'll keep trying until you do." She stared at him, her heart pounding, and for the first time she let herself really look at him, not as some impossible figure, but as a man who was choosing her over and over despite everything. "Okay," she whispered. Caleb's expression shifted, relief flickering across his face. "Okay? I'll try." A slow smile spread across his face, and it transformed him, softened the hard edges, made him look younger, almost boyish. "That's all I need," he said. They stood there for a moment, the silence stretching between them, and then Caleb stepped back, his hand falling away. "I should get you back," he said, "before your sister sends out a search party." Martha nodded, and they walked back toward the hall, the sounds of music and laughter growing louder with each step. But this time, when they stepped inside, Martha didn't feel quite so exposed, because Caleb was beside her, his presence steady and sure, and for the first time in her life, she wasn't invisible. She was seen. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The next 2 weeks unfolded in a way Martha had never experienced before. Caleb came to town almost every day. Sometimes he had legitimate business, orders to place, supplies to pick up, questions about local ranchers. But more often than not, his visits felt deliberate, purposeful, like he was making a point. He'd walk into the store, nod to Lily if she was there, and then turn his full attention to Martha. He'd ask about her day, about the store, about her thoughts on everything from the weather to the best way to break a stubborn horse. And he listened, really listened, like her words mattered. It was disorienting. Martha had spent so long being background noise that she didn't quite know how to handle being the focus. Every time Caleb leaned against the counter, his eyes on her, she felt exposed, like he could see straight through her carefully constructed walls. And maybe he could, because he didn't treat her like she was fragile or delicate or in need of rescuing. He treated her like an equal, someone whose opinions had weight, someone worth knowing. "You ever think about leaving Copper Valley?" he asked one afternoon. Martha glanced up from the ledger. "Why would I?" "Curiosity. You've lived here your whole life, haven't you?" "Yes." "Never wanted to see what else is out there?" She hesitated. "I used to, when I was younger, but then Papa needed help and Lily was still in school and—" She trailed off, shrugging. "It just didn't happen." Caleb nodded slowly. "What would you have done if you'd left?" "I don't know." Martha set down her pen. "Maybe gone to San Francisco or Denver, somewhere with more." "More what?" "Everything." She smiled faintly. "More people, more opportunities, more chances to be someone other than the storekeeper's daughter. You're already someone. Here, maybe. But out there?" She shook her head. "I'd just be another face in the crowd." "And that appeals to you?" "Sometimes." Martha met his gaze. "Don't you ever want to disappear, just for a little while?" Caleb's expression shifted, something thoughtful crossing his face. "Yeah, I do." "Where would you go?" "Somewhere quiet, somewhere I could think without 100 voices telling me what I should be doing." Martha tilted her head. "Is that why you came here? To get away?" "Partly." Caleb leaned forward, his elbows on the counter. "I spent 10 years working ranches for other men, building their operations, making them money. And I was good at it, but I got tired of answering to people who didn't know half as much as I did." "So you decided to start your own place?" "Yeah, figured it was time to build something that was mine." Martha studied him, the line of his jaw, the intensity in his eyes. "Do you ever regret it? Leaving what you knew?" "No." His answer was immediate, certain. "Best decision I ever made." "Even though it's harder?" "Especially because it's harder." Caleb's mouth quirked. "Easy doesn't teach you anything." Martha looked down at the ledger, her chest tight. "I wish I had that kind of courage." "You do." She laughed, but it came out bitter. "I run a store, Caleb. I count inventory and balance books. That's not courage." "You took over this place when your father couldn't do it anymore," Caleb said quietly. "You kept it running, kept your family fed, without complaining or asking for help. You think that doesn't take courage?" Martha didn't answer. Caleb reached across the counter and covered her hand with his. "You don't give yourself enough credit." She stared at their hands, the warmth of his skin against hers, and something shifted in her chest, small, fragile, but real. "Maybe," she said softly. Caleb smiled. "That's progress." Over the following days, people in town started to notice the pattern. Caleb Thornton, the new cattleman with money and prospects, spending his time with Martha Holloway instead of her prettier, more charming sister. The whispers grew louder. Mrs. Callahan cornered Martha one afternoon, her eyes bright with curiosity. "So you and Mr. Thornton," she said, leaning in close. "Is it serious?" Martha kept her expression neutral. "He's a customer who comes by every day and stays for an hour talking to you. He asks a lot of questions." "I'll bet he does." Mrs. Callahan's smile was sharp. "Your sister must be green with envy." Martha's jaw tightened. "Lily's fine." "Well, good for you, dear, snagging a man like that. Though I have to say, I'm surprised." "Surprised?" Martha's tone went cold. "Why's that?" Mrs. Callahan blinked, her smile faltering. "Oh, I just meant, well, you're so practical and he's so, you know." "No, I don't." "Never mind, dear." Mrs. Callahan patted her arm. "I'm sure you'll make a lovely match." She hurried off, and Martha stood there, her hands clenched at her sides, anger simmering under her skin. That night she vented to Lily while they washed dishes. "She acted like it was some kind of miracle," Martha said, scrubbing a plate harder than necessary. Like I should be grateful someone like Caleb would even look at me. Lily dried a glass, her expression sympathetic. Mrs. Callahan's a gossip. You know that. It's not just her, it's everyone. They all think the same thing, that I'm lucky he's giving me the time of day. Are you? Martha froze, turning to stare at her sister. What? Are you lucky? Lily set down the glass. I'm not trying to be cruel, Martha. I'm asking honestly. Do you feel lucky that he chose you? Martha's throat tightened. I don't know what I feel. Then maybe you should figure it out. Lily's voice was gentle. Because Caleb's not going to wait forever. He hasn't even... Martha broke off, flustered. It's not like that. Isn't it? Lily raised an eyebrow. He's courting you, Martha. Everyone knows it. The question is, do you want him to be? Martha turned back to the sink, her hands trembling. It scares me. I know. What if I'm not enough? Lily sighed and moved closer, wrapping an arm around Martha's shoulders. You are enough. You've always been enough. You just have to believe it. Martha leaned into her sister, her vision blurring. I don't know how. Then let him show you. Well, a few days later, Caleb asked Martha to ride out to his ranch. I want you to see it, he said, standing in the store with his hat in his hands. See what I'm building. Martha hesitated. I don't know if I should. Why not? People will talk. They're already talking. Caleb's expression was calm. Might as well give them something real to talk about. Martha bit her lip, torn. Part of her wanted to say no, to stay safe inside the boundaries she'd built for herself. But another part, the part that had started to wake up over the past few weeks, wanted to say yes. All right, she said finally. Caleb's face lit up. Tomorrow? I'll pick you up at noon. Okay. The next day, Martha dressed in her plainest riding skirt and waited nervously by the store window. When Caleb arrived with a wagon, she climbed up beside him, acutely aware of the eyes watching from across the street. They rode in comfortable silence, the town falling away behind them as the landscape opened up, rolling hills dotted with sagebrush, the distant mountains painted purple against the sky. It's beautiful out here, Martha said. Wait till you see the ranch. 20 minutes later, they crested a hill, and Martha's breath caught. The ranch spread out below them, a sprawling piece of land bordered by a creek, with pastures marked out by new fencing and a half-finished house sitting on a rise. It was raw, unpolished, but there was potential there, a sense of something being born. Caleb pulled the wagon to a stop and helped her down. What do you think? Martha turned in a slow circle, taking it all in. It's incredible, Caleb. It will be. He gestured toward the house. Once it's finished, right now it's just bones. They walked together toward the structure, and Caleb explained his plans. Where the barn would go, how many head of cattle he planned to run, the irrigation system he wanted to build. Martha listened, fascinated by the way his voice changed when he talked about it. More animated, more alive. You really love this, she said. I do. Caleb stopped, looking out over the land. It's mine. Every decision, every mistake, every success, it's all mine. I've never had that before. Martha understood that feeling more than she could say. They stood there for a while, the wind tugging at their clothes, and then Caleb turned to her. I want to show you something else. He led her to the edge of the property, where the creek ran clear and cold over smooth stones. A stand of cottonwoods provided shade, and the grass was thick and green. This is my favorite spot, Caleb said. I come here when I need to think. Martha knelt by the water, trailing her fingers through it. It's peaceful. Yeah. Caleb sat down beside her. I thought, if things work out, this might be a good place to build a second house. Smaller. For guests, maybe. Or, he trailed off. Or what? He met her eyes. Or for us. Someday. Martha's heart stuttered. Caleb. I know it's fast, he said, and I know you're scared. But I need you to understand something, Martha. I'm not playing games. I'm not here because I'm bored or because I like the challenge. I'm here because when I look at you, I see the kind of woman I want to build a life with. Martha's hands shook. You barely know me. I know enough. His voice was steady, certain. And what I don't know, I want to learn. But I need to know if you're willing to let me. She stared at him, her chest so tight she could barely breathe. Everything in her screamed to run, to protect herself, to not let this fragile, terrifying hope take root. But then she thought about the past 2 weeks, the way Caleb had shown up, over and over, patient and steady and sure. The way he looked at her like she mattered, the way he made her feel like maybe, just maybe, she was worth choosing. "I'm willing," she whispered. Caleb's expression shifted, relief and something deeper flooding his face. "Yeah?" "Yeah." He reached out and took her hand, and this time Martha didn't pull away. They sat there by the creek until the sun started to sink, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. And for the first time in her life, Martha let herself believe that maybe she deserved this, that maybe she was enough. The ride back to town felt different. Martha sat beside Caleb in the wagon, the setting sun casting long shadows across the road, and she couldn't stop replaying his words. "I see the kind of woman I want to build a life with." The statement should have terrified her, and part of it did, but another part felt lighter, like something heavy had been lifted off her chest. Caleb didn't push for conversation. He just drove, occasionally glancing her way with a small smile, and Martha found herself grateful for the silence. She needed time to process what had just happened, what she'd agreed to. When they reached the edge of town, Caleb slowed the wagon. "I'll drop you at the store." "Thank you." He pulled up in front of the building, the windows dark, and helped her down. His hand lingered on hers for a moment before he let go. "Martha," he said, his voice low, "I meant what I said out there." "I know. And I'm not going anywhere." She met his eyes, and for once, she didn't look away. "I know that too." His smile widened, and he climbed back onto the wagon. "Good night, then." "Good night." She watched him drive off, the wagon disappearing around the corner, and then she turned toward the house. Through the window, she could see lamplight flickering in the kitchen, and she braced herself for the questions she knew were coming. Lily was waiting at the table, a cup of tea in front of her. She looked up when Martha entered, her expression somewhere between curious and worried. "How was it?" Lily asked. Martha sat down across from her, pulling off her gloves. "It was good." "Just good?" "It was more than good." Martha rubbed her temples, trying to find the right words. "He showed me his ranch, his plans, and he told me—" She trailed off. "Told you what?" "That he wants to build a life with me." Lily's eyes went wide. "Martha, that's— I know." "Did you say yes?" "I said I was willing to try." Martha looked down at her hands. "I don't know if that's the same thing." Lily reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "It's enough. It's a start." Martha wanted to believe that. She really did. But the doubt that had lived in her for so long didn't just disappear because one man said pretty words. It sat there, quiet and persistent, whispering that this was all temporary. That eventually, Caleb would see what everyone else saw. The plain, practical woman who wasn't worth the trouble. "What if I disappoint him?" Martha asked quietly. "What if you don't?" "Lily, I'm serious." Lily's grip tightened. "You've spent so long expecting the worst that you can't even imagine the best. But what if this works, Martha? What if he's exactly who he says he is, and you're exactly who he wants?" Martha's throat tightened. "Then I'd be terrified." "Good. You should be." Lily smiled gently, "because that means it matters." They sat there in the lamplight, the house quiet around them, and Martha let herself sit with the fear instead of running from it. Maybe Lily was right. Maybe being terrified was just part of letting someone in, or maybe it was a sign that she was about to make the biggest mistake of her life. She wouldn't know until she tried. Over the next week, Caleb's visits became a fixture of Martha's routine. He'd arrive mid-morning, help unload shipments, and spend the rest of the time talking to her while she worked. Sometimes they discussed practical things, supplies, weather, the state of the cattle market. Other times, the conversations drifted into deeper territory. "Tell me something no one else knows about you," Caleb said one afternoon. Martha looked up from the crate she was unpacking. "Why?" "Because I want to know you. The real you, not the version you show everyone else." She hesitated, her hand stilling on a jar of preserves. "I used to write stories." Caleb's eyebrows lifted. "What kind of stories?" "Made-up ones, about people who left town and had adventures." She felt her cheeks warm. It was stupid. Just something I did when I was younger. It's not stupid. I burned them all when I was 16. Why? Martha shrugged. Because I realized I was never going to be one of those people. The ones who leave. So what was the point in pretending? Caleb was quiet for a moment. Do you ever regret it? Burning them? Sometimes. She pulled out another jar, focusing on the label. Mostly I just try not to think about it. Maybe you should start again. Martha laughed, but it came out hollow. I don't have time for that. You could make time. For what? Stories no one will ever read? For yourself. Caleb leaned against the counter, his gaze steady. You spend all your time taking care of other people, Martha. When do you do something just because it makes you happy? The question hit harder than she expected. Martha set down the jar and met his eyes. I don't know if I remember how. Then maybe I can help you figure it out. She didn't know how to respond to that, so she didn't. She just went back to unpacking, and Caleb let the subject drop. But his words stayed with her, circling in her mind like birds looking for a place to land. That evening, after the store closed, Martha found herself pulling out a blank ledger from the back room. She stared at the empty pages for a long time, her pen hovering over the first line. Then, slowly, she started to write. The words came haltingly at first, awkward and clumsy, but they came. She wrote about a woman who lived in a dusty frontier town, who spent her days counting inventory and balancing books, who never expected anything to change. And then a stranger walked into her store. Martha stopped, staring at what she'd written, and her chest tightened. It was just a few paragraphs, nothing special, but it was hers. Something she'd made. Something that existed because she'd chosen to create it. For the first time in years, she felt like maybe she was more than just the storekeeper's daughter. Get done. But not everyone in Copper Valley was happy about Caleb's attention. Martha started noticing the looks, sharp, assessing, tinged with something that felt like resentment. Women who used to ignore her now watched her with open curiosity, their whispers following her down the street. And the men, the ones who'd never given her a second glance, suddenly seemed uncomfortable around her, like they didn't know where to put their eyes. People are talking, her father said one evening, settling into his chair with a sigh. Martha glanced up from the stove. About what? You know what. She did. Of course she did. The whole town had an opinion about her and Caleb, and none of them were keeping it to themselves. Let them talk, Martha said, stirring the stew. Doesn't bother you? I didn't say that. Her father chuckled. Fair enough. He tamped tobacco into his pipe, his movements slow and deliberate. For what it's worth, I think he's a good man. You've barely spoken to him. Don't need to. I can see it in the way he looks at you. Martha's hand stilled on the spoon. How does he look at me? Like you're the only person in the room. Her father lit the pipe, the smell of smoke filling the kitchen. That's not something you fake. Martha wanted to believe him. But every time she started to let her guard down, the doubt crept back in, whispering that this was all too good to be true. The breaking point came 3 days later. Martha was in the store, reorganizing the shelves, when the door opened and Rebecca Hartley walked in. Rebecca was the daughter of the town's wealthiest rancher, blonde and polished, with the kind of confidence that came from never being told no. She swept into the store like she owned it, her silk skirts rustling, and stopped in front of the counter. Martha, she said, her voice sweet as honey. I need a word. Martha straightened, wariness prickling down her spine. About what? Caleb Thornton. Of course. Martha crossed her arms. What about him? Rebecca's smile didn't waver. I wanted to give you some advice, woman to woman. I didn't ask for advice. No, but you need it. Rebecca leaned against the counter, her expression almost pitying. You seem like a nice girl, Martha, practical, sensible, so I'm going to be honest with you. How generous. Men like Caleb don't settle for women like you. The words landed like a slap. Martha's jaw tightened, but she kept her voice even. And what kind of woman am I? The kind who runs a store. The kind who's useful. But not the kind a man marries. Rebecca tilted her head. He's playing with you, Martha, and when he gets bored, he'll move on to someone more appropriate. Martha's hands clenched at her sides. You don't know him. I know men. Rebecca's smile turned sharp. And I know this town. You think people aren't laughing? You think they don't see exactly what's happening? Get out! Rebecca blinked. Excuse me? I said get out. Martha's voice was low and hard. Unless you're here to buy something, you're not welcome. For a moment, Rebecca just stared at her, surprise flickering across her face. Then her expression hardened. You're making a mistake. That's my business. Fine. Rebecca turned toward the door, then paused. But don't say I didn't warn you. She left in a swirl of silk and expensive perfume, and Martha stood there, shaking with anger, and something that felt dangerously close to tears. Lily appeared from the back room, her face pale. I heard. How much? Enough. Lily crossed to her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. Don't listen to her, Martha. She's just jealous. Is she? Martha's voice cracked. What if she's right? What if this whole thing is just, it's not? You don't know that. Yes? I do. Lily turned her, forcing her to meet her eyes. Because I've seen the way he looks at you, and it's nothing like the way men look at me. Martha frowned. What do you mean? When men look at me, they see something pretty, something to admire. But when Caleb looks at you, he sees someone real, someone who matters. Lily's grip tightened. That's worth more than anything Rebecca Hartley could offer. Martha wanted to believe her. She wanted it so badly it ached. But Rebecca's words had wormed their way under her skin, and she couldn't shake them. So that night, Caleb came by the house. Martha was sitting on the porch, staring out at the darkening street, when she heard his footsteps. She looked up, and there he was, his coat unbuttoned, his expression concerned. Your sister said you had a rough day, he said. She shouldn't have told you. I'm glad she did. Caleb sat down beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating off him. What happened? Martha debated lying, but she was too tired to keep up the pretense. Rebecca Hartley came by the store. Caleb's jaw tightened. What did she say? That you're going to get bored and leave, that I'm not the kind of woman men like you marry, that everyone's laughing at me. Martha's voice shook. And the worst part is, I don't know if she's wrong. Caleb was silent for a long moment. Then he said, Look at me. Martha turned, and the intensity in his eyes nearly undid her. I don't care what Rebecca Hartley thinks, Caleb said. I don't care what anyone in this town thinks. The only person whose opinion matters is yours. But what if she's right? What if you wake up one day and realize what? That you're exactly who I thought you were? Caleb's voice was fierce. Martha, I'm not some fool who doesn't know his own mind. I told you what I see when I look at you, and I meant it. You're strong, and you're honest, and you don't need anyone to tell you who you are. That's what I want. That's what I've been looking for. But You're scared, Caleb interrupted. I get it, but you can't let fear make your decisions for you. Martha's eyes stung. What if I'm not enough? Then I'm blind and stupid, and you should walk away right now. Caleb reached out, cupping her face in his hand. But I'm not, and you are. A tear slipped down her cheek, and Caleb wiped it away with his thumb. I need you to trust me, he said quietly. Not because I've earned it yet, but because I'm going to. Every single day, until you believe it. Martha's breath hitched. I don't know if I can. Then let me carry that for you, until you're ready. She stared at him, this man who'd walked into her life and refused to leave, and something inside her cracked open. Not completely, not yet, but enough to let a sliver of light through. Okay, she whispered. Caleb's expression softened, and he leaned forward, pressing his forehead against hers. Okay. They sat there in the gathering dark, the night sounds rising around them, and for the first time Martha let herself believe that maybe she wasn't alone anymore, that maybe she didn't have to be. The following week, Caleb invited Martha to ride out to his ranch again. This time, he wanted to show her the progress on the house. It's coming along, he said as they approached. Not finished, but you can see what it's going to be. The frame was up now, the walls taking shape, and Martha could imagine it complete. A solid, sturdy home built to last. Caleb helped her down from the wagon and led her inside. The space was raw, the smell of fresh-cut wood thick in the air, but there was potential there. Martha walked through the rooms, running her hand along the beams, and Caleb watched her with an expression she couldn't quite read. What do you think? he asked. It's going to be beautiful. I was hoping you'd say that. Caleb stepped closer. Because I want you to help me finish it. Martha turned, confused. What? The house. I don't want to build it alone. His voice was steady, but there was vulnerability in his eyes. I want you to be part of it, to make decisions about how it should be, where things should go, what it should feel like. Caleb, I can't. Why not? Because it's yours. It's ours. He took her hand, or at least I want it to be. Martha's breath caught. You're asking me to what? I'm asking you to think about it, Caleb said, about what it would be like to build something together, about what a life out here could look like. She stared at him, her mind reeling. He wasn't proposing, not exactly, but he was painting a picture, showing her a future she'd never let herself imagine. I need time, she said. Take all the time you need. But even as she said it, Martha could feel the pull, the dangerous, exhilarating possibility that maybe this could work, that maybe she could have this. They spent the rest of the afternoon at the ranch, Caleb explaining his plans while Martha listened. He talked about where the barn would go, how he'd run cattle in the spring, the gardens he wanted to plant near the house. I was thinking vegetables mostly, he said, but maybe some flowers too. He trailed off, glancing at her. For what? For you. If you wanted them. Martha's chest tightened. You're planning flower gardens for me? Why not? Because no one's ever done that before. Caleb smiled. Then maybe it's time someone did. They walked back to the creek, and Martha sat down on the bank, pulling off her boots and dipping her feet in the cold water. Caleb sat beside her, and for a while they didn't talk. Then Martha said, When I was a girl, I used to dream about having a place like this. Yeah? Not a ranch exactly, just space. Somewhere I could breathe, somewhere that was mine. She wiggled her toes in the water. But I stopped dreaming about it a long time ago. Why? Because it hurt too much, wanting something I'd never have. Caleb was quiet for a moment. Then he said, What if you could have it now? Martha turned to look at him. I don't know if I'm ready for that. That's fair. Caleb met her gaze. But when you are, I'll be here. She wanted to tell him he was wasting his time, that she was too broken, too scared, too used to being overlooked to ever be what he needed. But the words wouldn't come, because deep down, in a place she'd buried for years, she wanted this. Wanted him. Wanted the life he was offering, and that terrified her more than anything. The next few days passed in a blur. Martha threw herself into work, trying to outrun the questions circling in her head. But everywhere she turned, she saw reminders of Caleb, the coffee beans he'd brought, the supplies he'd ordered, the spot on the counter where he always leaned when they talked. Lily noticed, of course. You're avoiding him, she said one evening. I'm not. You are? He came by twice today, and you sent me out to deal with him. Martha didn't answer. Lily sighed and sat down across from her. What's going on? I don't know if I can do this. Do what? Trust it. Believe it. Martha looked down at her hands. Every time I start to think maybe this is real, something in me panics, like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. Maybe there is no other shoe, Lily said gently. Maybe this is just good. Good things don't happen to people like me. Says who? Martha didn't answer. Lily leaned forward, her expression fierce. You've spent your whole life believing you're not worth choosing, and now someone's chosen you, and you're so convinced it's a trick that you can't even enjoy it. It's not that simple. It is, though. Lily's voice softened. You just have to decide if you're brave enough to let yourself have this. Martha's throat tightened. What if I'm not? Then you'll lose it, and you'll spend the rest of your life wondering what might have been. Lily reached across the table, squeezing her hand. Don't do that to yourself, Martha. Don't let fear rob you of something real. The next afternoon, Caleb came by the store. Martha saw him through the window and felt her pulse kick. She busied herself with a crate of goods, trying to look occupied, but when the bell chimed, she couldn't avoid him any longer. Afternoon, Caleb said. Afternoon. He studied her for a moment, then said, You've been avoiding me. I've been busy. Martha, I need to finish this inventory. Caleb crossed to the counter and leaned against it, blocking her path. Talk to me. There's nothing to say. There's plenty to say. You're just too scared to say it. Martha's jaw tightened. Don't tell me what I'm feeling. Then tell me yourself. His voice was calm but firm. Because the woman I've been spending time with doesn't run from hard conversations. She faces them head on. Martha set down the ledger, her hands shaking. Fine. You want to know what I'm feeling? I'm terrified, Caleb. I'm terrified that this is all some kind of mistake. And one day you're going to wake up and realize you could have done better. Better than you? Yes. Caleb shook his head slowly. There is no better. You don't know that. I do. He stepped closer. Martha, I've met a lot of women, beautiful women, charming women, women who know how to flirt and laugh and make a man feel important, but none of them made me want to stay. None of them made me think about building a life. He paused. You do. Martha's eyes stung. Why? Because you're real. Because you don't play games. Because when I'm with you, I don't have to pretend to be anything other than who I am. His voice dropped. That's what I want, Martha. Not some perfect version of you, just you. She stared at him, her chest so tight she could barely breathe. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. Then we'll figure it out together. What if I mess it up? Then we'll fix it. Caleb reached out, taking her hand. But you have to stop running. You have to let me in. Martha looked down at their joined hands, and for the first time she didn't pull away. I'll try, she said quietly. That's all I'm asking. And when he pulled her into his arms, Martha let herself lean into him, let herself feel the solid warmth of his chest, the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. For the first time in her life, she let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, she deserved to be held. That embrace in the store became a turning point, though Martha didn't realize it at first. Over the next few days, something shifted between them. The tension that had coiled tight in her chest began to loosen. Not completely, but enough that she could breathe a little easier. Caleb didn't push. He just kept showing up, steady as sunrise, and slowly Martha found herself leaning into the routine of it. He'd arrive mid-morning, help her unload shipments, and stay to talk while she worked. Sometimes they discussed his ranch, the progress on the house, the cattle he'd bought, the hands he'd hired. Other times they talked about nothing important at all. Books they'd read, places they'd never been. The way the light hit the mountains at dusk. It was ordinary, comfortable. And for Martha, that was more unsettling than grand gestures would have been. You're smiling more, Lily observed one evening as they closed up the store. Martha glanced at her. Am I? You are. It's nice. Lily locked the door and turned, her expression thoughtful. He's good for you. Maybe. Definitely. Lily linked her arm through Martha's as they walked home. I've never seen you like this. Lighter. Martha wanted to argue, but she couldn't, because Lily was right. The weight she'd carried for so long, the certainty that she'd always be overlooked, always be second choice, had started to lift. Not entirely. The doubt still lived in her, whispering in quiet moments, but it was quieter now. I'm scared it won't last, Martha admitted. Everything ends eventually, Lily said, but that doesn't mean it's not worth having. They walked in silence for a while, the evening air cooling around them, and Martha thought about what her sister had said. Maybe Lily was right. Maybe she'd spent so long protecting herself from disappointment that she'd forgotten how to let herself feel anything else. When they reached the house, their father was sitting on the porch, pipe in hand, watching the street with half-closed eyes. Evening, girls, he said. Evening, Papa. Martha sat down beside him while Lily went inside. You feeling all right? Just tired. He took a pull from his pipe, the smoke curling into the darkening sky. Getting old, I suppose. Martha's chest tightened. Her father had been saying things like that more often lately, small admissions of weakness that he never would have made a year ago. She wanted to tell him he was fine, that he had plenty of years left, but the words felt hollow. You need anything? She asked instead. No, sweetheart, just enjoying the quiet. He glanced at her. Caleb came by earlier, looking for you. I was at the store. He figured. Her father smiled. Nice fellow. Asked if he could take you to dinner tomorrow. Martha's pulse jumped. Dinner? At the hotel. Said he wanted to do things properly. Her father's eyes crinkled. I told him that was up to you. Martha stared out at the street, her mind racing. A public dinner at the hotel. Not a quiet conversation at the store or a ride out to his ranch. A real, formal courting gesture that the whole town would see. "What did you tell him?" she asked. "That I'd pass along the message." Her father knocked the ash from his pipe. "So, what's your answer?" Martha hesitated. Part of her wanted to say no, to keep things contained, to avoid the scrutiny that would come with such a visible declaration. But another part, the part that had been growing stronger over the past few weeks, wanted to say yes. "Tell him yes," she said quietly. Her father's smile widened. "Good. You deserve a nice evening." "Papa." "You do," he said firmly. "And don't let anyone tell you otherwise." The next evening, Martha stood in front of her mirror, staring at her reflection with a mix of dread and determination. She'd changed her dress 3 times already, unsatisfied with each option. The green one looked too plain, the gray one too severe. The brown one made her look washed out. Finally, she settled on a dark blue dress with a simple collar and fitted sleeves. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean and well made, and it would have to do. Lily appeared in the doorway, her eyes bright. "You look beautiful." "I look nervous." "That too." Lily stepped into the room and adjusted Martha's collar. "But mostly beautiful." "What if people stare?" "They will." Lily met her eyes in the mirror. "And you'll hold your head up and ignore them." Martha's hands trembled as she fastened her earrings. "I don't know if I can do this." "Yes, you can." Lily turned her around, gripping her shoulders. "Martha, you've run a business, kept this family afloat, and survived being invisible your whole life. You can handle a dinner." "That's different." "No, it's not. It's all just people. And people's opinions don't define you." Lily's expression softened. "Unless you let them." Martha took a shaky breath. "What if I say something stupid? Or spill something? Or then you'll laugh it off and keep going." Lily squeezed her shoulders. "Stop trying to be perfect. Just be you." Downstairs, the front door opened, and Martha heard Caleb's voice greeting her father. Her stomach flipped. "That's him," Lily said, grinning. "Go." Martha descended the stairs slowly, her hand gripping the railing for balance. Caleb stood in the entryway, dressed in a dark suit that made him look even taller, more imposing. When he saw her, his expression shifted, something warm and admiring that made her cheeks flush. "You look lovely," he said. "Thank you." Her voice came out smaller than she intended. Caleb offered his arm. "Ready?" Martha glanced at her father, who nodded encouragingly, and then at Lily, who gave her a thumbs up from the stairs. She took Caleb's arm, and they stepped out into the evening. The walk to the hotel was short, but felt interminable. People turned to watch as they passed, their conversations pausing, their eyes tracking every step. Martha kept her gaze straight ahead, her hand tight on Caleb's arm, and tried to ignore the heat crawling up her neck. "You're doing fine," Caleb murmured. "I feel like I'm on display." "You are." He glanced down at her, his expression amused. "But that's their problem, not yours." The hotel dining room was elegant by Copper Valley standards. White tablecloths, polished silverware, candles flickering in glass holders. The hostess led them to a table near the window, and Martha could feel every eye in the room following them. Caleb pulled out her chair and she sat, her hands folded tightly in her lap. He settled across from her, looking completely at ease, and Martha wondered how he managed it, how he could sit here unbothered by the whispers and stares, while she felt like she was coming apart at the seams. "Breathe," Caleb said quietly. "I am breathing." "You're holding your breath." He leaned forward, his voice low. "Martha, look at me." She met his eyes, and the noise in the room seemed to fade. "It's just us," Caleb said. "Everyone else is background. Ignore them." Martha wanted to believe that, but ignoring people had never been her strong suit. She'd spent too many years hyper-aware of what everyone thought, measuring herself against their judgments. The server appeared, a young man Martha vaguely recognized, and took their order. Caleb ordered steak and potatoes. Martha chose the chicken, her appetite non-existent, but her need to appear normal overwhelming. When the server left, Caleb leaned back in his chair, studying her. "You want to leave, don't you?" Martha blinked. "What?" "No." "You're gripping that napkin like it's the only thing keeping you upright." She looked down and realized he was right. She forced her hands to relax, smoothing the napkin across her lap. "I'm fine." "You're terrified." "I'm not." She stopped, exhaling sharply. All right. Yes. I'm terrified. Of what? Of this. Of people seeing us together and thinking. She broke off, shaking her head. Thinking what? That I don't belong here. With you. That it's some kind of joke. Caleb's expression darkened. It's not a joke. I know that, you know that, but they don't. Martha gestured vaguely at the room. Look at them, Caleb. They're all watching, waiting for me to mess this up, to prove that I'm exactly what they think I am. Plain, boring, not worth the trouble. And you care what they think? Yes. The admission came out raw and unfiltered. I wish I didn't, but I do. Caleb was quiet for a moment. Then he said, You want to know what I think? What? I think you've spent so long letting other people define you that you've forgotten you get to decide who you are. He leaned forward, his gaze intense. You're not plain, Martha. You're direct. You're not boring. You're steady. And you're worth every bit of trouble I've gone through to get to know you. Martha's throat tightened. You say that now. I'll say it tomorrow too. And the day after that. And every day until you believe it. She stared at him, her heart hammering, and for a moment she couldn't find the words. The server returned with their food, breaking the moment, and they ate in relative silence. Martha pushed her chicken around her plate, her appetite still absent, while Caleb ate with the easy confidence of someone who'd never questioned whether he deserved to take up space. Halfway through the meal, Rebecca Hartley walked into the dining room. She was with her father, both of them dressed in expensive finery, and she stopped short when she saw Martha and Caleb. Her eyes narrowed, and she said something to her father before making her way to their table. Martha's stomach dropped. Mr. Thornton, Rebecca said, her voice syrupy. What a surprise. Caleb looked up, his expression polite but distant. Miss Hartley. Rebecca's gaze slid to Martha, and her smile sharpened. And Martha, how lovely to see you out. Rebecca, Martha said evenly, I didn't realize the two of you were... Rebecca gestured vaguely at the table. Well, how charming. Is there something you need? Caleb's tone was cool. Oh no, I just wanted to say hello. Rebecca's smile didn't falter. Though I must say, Mr. Thornton, I'm surprised. I would have thought a man of your standing would prefer... She trailed off, her meaning clear. Caleb set down his fork, his eyes hardening. Would prefer what? Rebecca blinked, clearly not expecting him to push back. I just meant... I know what you meant. Caleb's voice was quiet but deadly. And I'll say this once, Miss Hartley. My choices are none of your concern. And if you have a problem with the woman I'm courting, you're welcome to keep it to yourself. The color drained from Rebecca's face. Around them, the dining room had gone silent, every ear tuned to the conversation. I didn't mean to offend, Rebecca said stiffly. Then you should choose your words more carefully. Caleb turned back to his plate, dismissing her. Good night, Miss Hartley. Rebecca stood there for a moment, her mouth opening and closing, and then she spun on her heel and stalked back to her table. Martha stared at Caleb, her pulse racing. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. He met her eyes. She had no right to speak to you that way, or about you. People are going to talk. Let them. Caleb's expression softened. Martha, I told you, I don't care what they think. And the sooner you stop caring too, the better off you'll be. Martha looked down at her plate, her chest tight. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to let go of the fear and the doubt and the constant gnawing certainty that she wasn't enough. But years of conditioning didn't just disappear because one man said they should. I'm trying, she said quietly. I know. Caleb reached across the table and took her hand. And that's all I'm asking. They finished the meal in silence, the weight of the evening pressing down on Martha's shoulders. When they finally left, the night air felt like a relief, cool and clean, and she breathed deeply, trying to settle herself. Caleb walked her home, his hand warm and steady around hers, and when they reached her door, he turned to face her. Thank you for tonight, he said. Martha frowned. For what? I barely said 2 words. For showing up. For trying. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. I know it wasn't easy. It wasn't. But you did it anyway. His thumb traced her cheekbone, a soft, grounding touch. That takes courage. Martha's eyes stung. I don't feel courageous. You don't have to feel it for it to be true. She looked up at him, this man who saw her in a way no one else ever had, and the words tumbled out before she could stop them. What if I can't be what you need? You already are. But what if... Martha. Caleb's voice was firm but gentle. Stop borrowing trouble. We'll figure it out as we go. Together. She wanted to argue, to list all the ways this could go wrong, but the look in his eyes stopped her. He wasn't offering her perfection. He was offering partnership, a chance to build something real, flaws and all. And maybe that was enough. Okay, she whispered. Caleb smiled and leaned down, pressing a kiss to her forehead. Good night, Martha. Good night. She watched him walk away, his figure disappearing into the darkness. And then she went inside, her heart still racing. Lily was waiting in the kitchen, practically vibrating with curiosity. How was it? Intense. Intense good or intense bad? Both. Martha sank into a chair, exhausted. Rebecca showed up. Lily's eyes widened. What did she do? She tried to make me feel small, and Caleb shut her down in front of the entire dining room. Good, Lily said fiercely. She deserved it. Everyone was staring. So? So it's going to be all over town by morning. Lily shrugged. Let them talk. At least now they know he's serious about you. Martha rubbed her temples. I don't know if I'm ready for this. For what? For everyone to see, for the scrutiny, for... She trailed off, unable to articulate the tangle of emotions churning in her chest. Lily sat down across from her, her expression softening. Martha, you've been invisible for so long that being seen feels dangerous. But it's not. It's just different. What if I can't handle it? Then you'll learn. Lily reached across the table, squeezing her hand. But you won't be doing it alone. Caleb's not going anywhere, and neither am I. Martha's vision blurred, and she blinked hard. Thank you. Always. Does. The following days proved Lily right. The entire town was buzzing with gossip about the dinner, about Caleb's public defense of Martha, about Rebecca's humiliation, about what it all meant. Martha heard the whispers everywhere she went. At the store, women would fall silent when she approached, their eyes sliding away. On the street, men tipped their hats with knowing smiles. Even Mrs. Callahan, usually so eager to pry, seemed unsure how to approach her. It was exhausting. But Caleb didn't waver. He showed up every day, unbothered by the talk, and his steady presence became Martha's anchor. You're handling this better than I expected, he said one afternoon. Martha looked up from the ledger. Am I? You haven't run away yet. She laughed, but it came out shaky. I've thought about it. And I'm still here. Caleb's smile was warm, approving. That's all that matters. A few days later, he asked her to come to his ranch again. This time, he had something specific he wanted to show her. I finished the main room, he said as they rode out. Wanted your opinion. When they arrived, the house looked more complete than before. The walls were up, the roof was on, and through the open doorway, Martha could see fresh-cut floorboards gleaming in the afternoon light. Caleb helped her down and led her inside. The space was larger than she'd expected, with high ceilings and wide windows that let in streams of sunlight. It smelled like wood and sawdust and promise. What do you think? Caleb asked. Martha turned slowly, taking it all in. It's beautiful. It needs furniture, curtains, all the things that make it feel like a home. He paused. I was hoping you'd help with that. She turned to face him. Why me? Because I want this to feel like ours, not just mine. Martha's breath caught. Caleb, I'm not asking you to commit to anything yet, he said quickly. I'm just asking you to think about it, to imagine what it could be like. She looked around the empty room, trying to picture it filled. A table by the window, chairs around a hearth, curtains softening the light. It wasn't hard to imagine. In fact, it came too easily. I don't know if I can do this, she said. Do what? Let myself want this. Her voice cracked. What if it doesn't work out? Caleb crossed to her, taking her hands in his. Then we'll deal with it. But you can't live your whole life protecting yourself from hurt, Martha. Sometimes you have to take the risk. And if I get hurt anyway? Then at least you'll have tried. His grip tightened. Isn't that better than never knowing? Martha stared at him, her chest so tight it ached. He was asking her to leap, to trust that he'd catch her, and every instinct she had screamed at her to pull back. But she was tired of being afraid. "All right," she whispered. Caleb's expression shifted, hope flickering across his face. "All right? I'll think about it, about what this could be." He pulled her into his arms, and Martha let herself lean into him, let herself feel the solid warmth of his chest, the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. And for the first time, she let herself imagine a future that didn't involve being invisible. They stayed at the ranch until sunset, Caleb pointing out where he wanted to build a barn, where the gardens would go, how he planned to fence the pastures. Martha listened, asking questions, offering suggestions, and with each exchange the picture grew clearer. This could be real. She could have this, if she was brave enough to take it. When Caleb drove her back to town, the sky was painted in shades of orange and pink, and Martha felt something shift inside her. Not a complete transformation, but a crack in the armor she'd built around her heart. "Thank you for today," she said as they pulled up to the store. "Thank you for coming." She climbed down, but before she could walk away, Caleb caught her hand. "Martha," he said, his voice serious, "I need you to know something." "What?" "I'm not going to give up on you, even when you give up on yourself." Her throat tightened. "Caleb, I mean it." His eyes held hers. "So stop waiting for me to leave, because it's not going to happen." Martha didn't trust herself to speak. She just nodded, and Caleb let her go. As she walked into the house, Lily was waiting, her expression expectant. "Well?" Lily asked. Martha sank into a chair, her hands trembling. "He asked me to help him make his house a home." Lily's eyes widened. And I said I'd think about it. "Martha, I'm terrified, Lily." The words came out in a rush. "I'm terrified that I'm going to mess this up, that I'm not going to be enough, that one day he's going to wake up and realize he made a mistake." Lily knelt in front of her, gripping her hands. "Then be terrified. But don't let that stop you from trying." Martha's vision blurred. "What if I can't do it?" "Then you'll figure it out, with him, together." Lily's voice was fierce. "But you have to stop sabotaging yourself, Martha. You have to let yourself have this." Martha stared at her sister, and something in her chest cracked open. All the years of doubt, of believing she wasn't worth choosing, of protecting herself from disappointment, it all came flooding out in a wave of tears. Lily pulled her into a hug, and Martha clung to her, sobbing into her shoulder. "I'm so scared," Martha choked out. "I know, but you're also the bravest person I know." Lily pulled back, cupping her face. "And you deserve this. You deserve to be loved. You deserve to be chosen." Martha wanted to believe her. She wanted it so badly it hurt. And maybe, just maybe, it was time to start trying. That night, Martha lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling while her mind spun in circles. Lily's words echoed in her head. You deserve to be loved. You deserve to be chosen. And for the first time, she tried to believe them. Not just accept them intellectually, but actually let them sink into the places where the doubt lived. It wasn't easy. 23 years of believing you're not enough doesn't disappear because someone tells you otherwise. But maybe, Martha thought, it was a start. The next morning, she woke with a strange sense of clarity. She dressed quickly, braided her hair, and went downstairs to find her father already at the kitchen table, his coffee steaming in front of him. "Morning," he said, glancing up. "You sleep all right?" "Not really." He gestured to the chair across from him. "Want to talk about it?" Martha poured herself a cup and sat down. For a while, she just held the cup, letting the warmth seep into her hands. And then she said, "Caleb wants me to help him finish his house." Her father nodded slowly. "And that scares you." "Everything about this scares me." "That's because it matters." He took a sip of his coffee. "If it didn't, you wouldn't be scared." Martha looked down at her cup. "What if I'm not ready?" "You'll never be ready. Not completely." Her father's voice was gentle. "But you do it anyway. That's what courage is, sweetheart. Doing the thing that terrifies you because it's worth it. And if it falls apart, then you pick up the pieces and keep going." He reached across the table, covering her hand with his. "But you don't get to know unless you try. And I think you'd regret it if you didn't." Martha's throat tightened. "I don't want to disappoint him." "You won't. You don't know that." "I do." Her father's grip tightened. Because you're not the kind of person who quits. You're not the kind of person who does things halfway. And if you commit to this, to him, you'll give it everything you have. Martha blinked hard, her vision blurring. I'm so tired of being afraid. Then stop. Her father's voice was firm. Stop letting fear make your decisions. Stop letting other people's opinions define you. And start trusting that you're worth exactly what he thinks you are. She stared at him, and something in his expression, steady, certain, unwavering, made the knot in her chest loosen just a little. I'll try, she whispered. That's my girl. Caleb came by the store later that morning, his expression cautious, like he wasn't sure what kind of reception he'd get. Morning, he said. Martha looked up from the counter. Morning. You all right? I've been thinking. Caleb went still. About what? Martha set down her pen and met his eyes. About what you said. About the house. About building something together. And? She took a breath, steadying herself. I want to try. Caleb's expression shifted, relief flooding his face. You do? I'm terrified, and I'll probably second-guess myself 100 times. But yes, I want to try. He crossed to the counter in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. Martha closed her eyes and let herself sink into the embrace, let herself feel the solid certainty of him. Thank you, he murmured against her hair. For what? For trusting me. For giving this a chance. Martha pulled back, looking up at him. Don't make me regret it. I won't. His voice was fierce. I promise you, Martha, I won't. And when he kissed her, slow and gentle and full of promise, Martha felt the last of her defenses crumble. She was done running. Protect. Over the next few weeks, everything changed, not in grand, sweeping gestures, but in small, incremental shifts that gradually reshaped Martha's world. Caleb started spending more time in town, dividing his days between the ranch and the store, and Martha found herself looking forward to his visits with an eagerness that would have embarrassed her a month ago. They talked about the house, about what kind of furniture they'd need, what colors she preferred, where the kitchen should be. At first, Martha hesitated to offer opinions, convinced that Caleb was just being polite. But he pushed back every time, insisting that he wanted her input, that this was their project, not his alone. What about blue curtains? She suggested one afternoon. Caleb tilted his head. Why blue? I don't know. I've always liked blue. It feels calm. Then blue it is. Martha frowned. You don't have to agree with everything I say. I'm not. I like blue too. He smiled. And even if I didn't, I'd still pick it. Because it makes you happy. It was statements like that, casual, unguarded, that undid her. Caleb didn't make grand declarations or shower her with empty compliments. He just showed up, day after day, proving through action that he meant what he said. And slowly, Martha started to believe him. She also started to notice the way people in town treated her differently. The whispers hadn't stopped, but the tone had shifted. Where before there'd been mockery and disbelief, now there was something closer to grudging respect. Women who'd ignored her for years suddenly wanted to chat. Men tipped their hats with genuine courtesy. Even Mrs. Callahan had stopped making barbed comments and started asking genuine questions. It's like they finally see you, Lily observed one evening. Martha was folding laundry, and she paused, considering. Or they see him, and I'm just the person standing next to him. No, Lily shook her head. They see you. They just needed someone else to see you first. Martha wanted to argue, but she couldn't, because Lily was right. Caleb's attention had forced the town to reconsider her, to look past the plain exterior and notice the person underneath. And while that should have bothered her, the idea that she needed a man's validation to be seen, it didn't, because Caleb hadn't changed her. He'd just helped her see herself more clearly. And maybe that was enough. 3 weeks after Martha agreed to help with the house, Caleb invited her to spend a full day at the ranch. I want to show you how it's all coming together, he said, and I want your help deciding where to put the garden. Martha agreed, and the next Saturday they rode out together under a cloudless sky. The ranch looked different now, more settled, more real. The house was nearly finished, the barn was framed, and cattle grazed in the fenced pastures. This is incredible, Martha said as they pulled up. It's getting there. Caleb helped her down. Come on, I want to show you the kitchen. Inside, the house smelled like fresh paint and new wood. The floors gleamed, the walls were smooth and clean, and light poured through the windows in golden streams. Caleb led her through the main room and into the kitchen, where a wide counter and a cast-iron stove sat waiting. "What do you think?" he asked. Martha ran her hand along the counter, imagining herself working there, cooking meals, washing dishes, building a life. "It's perfect." "I was hoping you'd say that." Caleb leaned against the doorway, watching her. "Because I want you to think of this as yours, not just a place you visit, a place you belong." Martha's chest tightened. "Caleb, I know I'm rushing this, and I know you're still scared, but I need you to understand something, Martha." He stepped closer, his voice dropping. "I'm not building this for me. I'm building it for us, and I'm not going to stop until you believe that." She stared at him, her heart hammering. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I want to marry you." The words hung in the air, stark and undeniable, and Martha felt the ground shift beneath her feet. "You what?" "I want to marry you," Caleb repeated, his gaze steady. "I know it's fast. I know you're probably not ready to hear it. But I'm not asking you to answer right now. I'm just telling you where I stand. So you know. So there's no confusion about what I want." Martha's hand shook. "Caleb, we've only known each other a few months." "I know. People will say, I don't care what people say." He took her hands in his grip warm and firm. "Martha, I've lived long enough to know when something's real. And this is real. You're real. And I'm not willing to pretend otherwise just because it makes other people more comfortable. But what if you can't do it? What if you're not enough? What if I change my mind?" Caleb's voice was gentle but unyielding. "I've heard all your doubts, Martha, and I'm telling you, they don't matter. Because I've already made my choice. The question is, can you make yours?" Martha pulled her hands back, wrapping her arms around herself. Her mind was spinning, her heart pounding, and she felt like she was standing on the edge of a cliff with no idea what lay below. "I don't know," she whispered. "That's all right." Caleb stepped back, giving her space. "Take your time, think about it, but know that I'm not going anywhere. And when you're ready to answer, I'll be here." They spent the rest of the day walking the property, Caleb pointing out where he wanted to plant trees, where the garden would go, how he envisioned the whole operation running. Martha tried to focus, tried to engage, but her mind kept circling back to his words. "I want to marry you." No one had ever said that to her before. No one had ever even come close. And now this man, this strong, steady, infuriatingly certain man, was offering her everything she'd ever wanted and been too afraid to ask for. The question was, could she accept it? That night, Martha sat on her bed with the blank ledger she'd started writing in weeks ago. She flipped through the pages, reading the scattered paragraphs she'd written, the half-formed story about a woman and a stranger and a life that changed. She picked up her pen and started writing. Not a story this time. A letter. To herself. "You've spent your whole life believing you weren't enough, that you were too plain, too practical, too invisible to be worth choosing. And you built walls around yourself to protect against the disappointment of never being seen. But you were wrong. Caleb sees you. And not the version of you that you think he should see. The real you. The woman who's strong and honest and capable and scared. And he's not asking you to be someone else. He's asking you to be exactly who you are. So the question isn't whether you're enough. The question is whether you're brave enough to believe you are." Martha stared at the words, her vision blurring, and then she closed the ledger and set it aside. She knew what she had to do. Eat. The next morning, Martha woke early and dressed with care. She didn't tell Lily where she was going. She just left a note saying she'd be back later and walked to the livery to rent a horse. The ride to Caleb's ranch felt longer than usual, every mile weighted with the enormity of what she was about to do. But she didn't turn back. She kept riding, her hands steady on the reins, her resolve hardening with each step. When she reached the ranch, Caleb was working on the barn, his sleeves rolled up, sweat gleaming on his forehead. He looked up when he heard the horse and froze, surprise flickering across his face. "Martha," he said, setting down his hammer. "What are you doing here?" She dismounted, her legs shaky, and walked toward him. "I need to talk to you." "All right." He wiped his hands on his trousers, his expression wary. Everything okay? I've been thinking about what you said, about marriage. Caleb went very still. And? Martha took a breath, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. And I'm terrified. I'm terrified that I'll disappoint you, that I won't be what you need, that one day you'll wake up and realize you made a mistake. Martha, but I'm more terrified of losing you, her voice cracked, of letting fear steal this from me, of spending the rest of my life wondering what could have been. Caleb's expression shifted, hope flickering in his eyes. What are you saying? I'm saying yes. The words came out in a rush. I'm saying I want to marry you. I want to build this life with you. I want to stop being afraid and start being brave. For a moment, Caleb just stared at her, his chest rising and falling, and then he crossed to her in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms, lifting her off the ground. You mean it? He asked, his voice rough. I mean it. He set her down and cupped her face in his hands, his eyes searching hers. You're sure? I'm terrified, but I'm sure. Caleb laughed, the sound full of relief and joy, and then he kissed her, deep and thorough and full of promise. When he pulled back, his forehead rested against hers, and he whispered, I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving you made the right choice. You'd better. He grinned and pulled her close, and Martha let herself sink into the embrace, let herself feel the solid certainty of him. She'd said yes. And for the first time in her life, she wasn't afraid of what came next. The engagement was announced the following week, and Copper Valley erupted in gossip. Some people were delighted, genuinely happy for the couple. Others were skeptical, convinced it wouldn't last, and a few, like Rebecca Hartley, were outright bitter. But Martha didn't care. She'd spent too long worrying about what other people thought, and she was done. Caleb had chosen her, and she'd chosen him back, and that was all that mattered. The wedding was planned for 6 weeks later, a simple ceremony at the community hall followed by a reception. Martha threw herself into the preparations with a focus that surprised even her. She sewed her own dress, pale cream with simple lines and a fitted waist, and worked with Lily to plan the menu and decorations. You're glowing, Lily said one afternoon, watching Martha pin fabric. Martha glanced up. Am I? You are. You look happy. Martha paused, considering. I am happy. I didn't think I could be, but I am. Lily smiled, her eyes bright. I'm so glad. The weeks flew by in a blur of planning and preparation, and before Martha knew it, the wedding day arrived. She woke to sunlight streaming through her window and the sound of Lily humming in the next room. For a moment, she just lay there, letting the reality of it sink in. Today, she was getting married, to Caleb Thornton. The thought should have terrified her, but instead, it filled her with a quiet, steady certainty. Lily helped her dress, fastening the buttons and adjusting the hem, and when Martha looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. Not because she looked different, but because the woman staring back at her looked confident, settled, like she knew exactly who she was and where she belonged. You're beautiful, Lily whispered. I'm playing. No. Lily turned her around, gripping her shoulders. You're real. And that's better. Downstairs, their father was waiting, dressed in his best suit, his eyes damp when he saw her. Oh, sweetheart, he said, his voice thick. You look perfect. Martha hugged him, her own eyes stinging. Thank you, Papa, for everything. You've made me proud, Martha, every single day. He pulled back, smiling through his tears. Now let's get you married. The walk to the community hall felt surreal, like she was moving through a dream. People lined the street, watching and waving, and Martha held her father's arm, her heart pounding. When they reached the hall, the doors opened, and Martha saw the space transformed. Wildflowers in mason jars, simple wooden chairs arranged in neat rows, and at the front, Caleb. He stood beside the officiant, dressed in a dark suit, his eyes fixed on her with an expression that took her breath away. Not awe or admiration, but recognition. Like he was seeing exactly who she was and loving every bit of it. Martha walked down the aisle, her father at her side, and when they reached the front, Caleb took her hand, his grip warm and steady. You look beautiful, he murmured. You look nervous. I am, he smiled, but in a good way. The ceremony was simple and brief. The officiant spoke about partnership and commitment, about building a life together, and then Caleb and Martha exchanged vows. I promise to see you, Caleb said, his voice steady. Every day. For the rest of my life. I promise to honor you, to support you, and to never let you feel invisible again. Martha's throat tightened, and she blinked hard before saying, I promise to trust you, to let you in, and to stop being afraid of deserving good things. They exchanged rings, simple gold bands, and when the officiant pronounced them married, Caleb kissed her, and the room erupted in applause. Martha pulled back, laughing, and Caleb grinned down at her. How do you feel? Like I just jumped off a cliff. And I'm flying. The reception was a blur of food and music and laughter. People came up to congratulate them, to shake Caleb's hand and kiss Martha's cheek. And for once, Martha didn't feel out of place. She felt seen, celebrated, like she belonged. Even Rebecca Hartley showed up, her expression tight, and offered a stiff congratulations. Martha accepted it gracefully, refusing to let the woman's bitterness dim her joy. As the evening wore on, Caleb pulled Martha onto the dance floor, and they swayed to the music, surrounded by the people of Copper Valley. Happy? Caleb asked. Terrified. He laughed. Still? A little. Martha looked up at him, but also happy. Really, truly happy. Good. He pulled her closer. Because this is just the beginning. Warsan. 2 days later, Martha and Caleb rode out to the ranch, their ranch now, and began the work of turning the house into a home. Martha threw herself into the task with a focus that surprised her. She hung the blue curtains she'd picked out, arranged furniture, planted seeds in the garden plot Caleb had prepared, and with each small act, she felt herself settling into this new life, into this new identity. She wasn't the storekeeper's daughter anymore. She wasn't the invisible sister, or the practical one, or the woman no one chose. She was Caleb's wife, and more importantly, she was herself. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sun set over the mountains, Caleb turned to her and said, Do you ever regret it? Regret what? Saying yes. Marrying me. Leaving the store. Martha had handed the store over to Lily, who'd proven more than capable of running it. And while part of her missed the routine, the familiar rhythm of the work, she didn't miss the life that had gone with it. No, she said honestly. I don't. Good. Caleb took her hand. Because I don't either. They sat in comfortable silence, and Martha thought about how far she'd come. A few months ago, she'd been convinced she'd spend the rest of her life alone, overlooked, invisible. And now she was sitting on a porch with a man who loved her, building a life she never thought she'd have. It wasn't perfect. There were still moments when the doubt crept in, when she wondered if she was enough. But those moments were growing fewer and farther between, replaced by a quiet, steady certainty that she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Caleb, she said. Yeah? Thank you. He frowned. For what? For seeing me, when no one else did. Caleb shook his head. You were always visible, Martha. People just weren't looking, but I was. And I always will be. Martha's eyes stung, and she leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling the solid warmth of him. She'd spent so many years believing she wasn't enough, that she was too plain, too practical, too invisible to matter. But Caleb had shown her something different. He'd shown her that strength didn't have to be loud, that value didn't have to be obvious, that being chosen wasn't about being perfect. It was about being real. And she was real, flawed and scared and trying her best, but real. And that, she realized, was more than enough. 6 months later, Martha stood in the garden, her hands covered in dirt, planting tomatoes while Caleb worked on the barn. The ranch was thriving. The cattle were healthy, the crops were growing, and the house felt like home. Lily visited once a week, bringing news from town and updates on the store. Their father had moved in with Lily, his health declining but his spirits still strong, and Martha made a point to visit him every Sunday. Life had settled into a rhythm, work and rest, challenge and joy. The ordinary miracle of building something together. One afternoon, as Martha was washing dishes, she glanced out the window and saw Caleb walking toward the house, a smile on his face. He'd been out checking the fences, and he looked tired but content. When he came inside, he wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. How's your day? He asked. Good. planted the last of the tomatoes. You're amazing, you know that? Martha smiled. You say that every day. Because it's true every day. She turned in his arms, looking up at him. Do you ever regret it? Choosing me? Not for a second. His expression was serious. Do you? No. And she meant it. Not for a second. Caleb kissed her, slow and gentle, and Martha let herself sink into the moment, into the certainty of it. She'd spent so long waiting to be chosen, convinced it would never happen. But Caleb had proven her wrong. He'd seen her, really seen her, and he'd chosen her anyway, not despite her flaws, but because of them. Because she was real. And in choosing her, he'd given her permission to choose herself. That was the thing people didn't understand about being overlooked. It wasn't just about other people not seeing you. It was about learning not to see yourself, about shrinking down so small that you became invisible even to your own eyes. But Caleb had refused to let her stay small. He'd pulled her into the light, forced her to take up space, insisted that she was worth seeing. And now, standing in the kitchen of the house they'd built together, Martha finally believed it. She was worth seeing. She was worth choosing. And she didn't need anyone else to tell her that anymore. Because she'd learned the most important truth of all. The person who needed to see her first, who needed to choose her first, was herself. And she had. That night, as they lay in bed, Caleb's arm around her shoulders, Martha thought about the woman she'd been 6 months ago. The one who counted inventory and balanced books and never let herself hope for more. That woman was gone. In her place was someone stronger, someone braver, someone who'd learned that being invisible wasn't about other people. It was about the story you told yourself. And once you changed the story, everything else changed too. What are you thinking about? Caleb asked, his voice drowsy. How different my life is now. Better? So much better. She turned to look at him. I never thought I'd have this. Any of this. You deserve it. I'm starting to believe that. Caleb smiled and pulled her closer. Good. Because it's true. Martha closed her eyes, feeling the steady rise and fall of his chest, and let herself sink into the peace of it. She'd spent so long being afraid of disappointment, afraid of rejection, afraid of wanting something she couldn't have. But Caleb had taught her that fear didn't have to be the end of the story. It could be the beginning. The thing that pushed you to take the leap, to reach for something better, to believe you were worth the risk. And she was. She'd always been worth it. She just hadn't known how to see it. But now she did. And that made all the difference. A year after their wedding, Martha sat on the porch of their home, watching the sun set over the mountains while Caleb tended the horses. The ranch had grown. They'd added more cattle, expanded the garden, built a second barn. And Martha had found her place in it, not as someone in the background, but as a partner, an equal. She'd also started writing again. Not just scattered paragraphs in a ledger, but real stories. About women who found strength in unexpected places. About people who learned to see themselves. About the quiet courage it took to choose hope over fear. She didn't know if anyone would ever read them, but that didn't matter. She wrote them for herself because they reminded her of how far she'd come. Caleb walked over and sat beside her, his hand finding hers. Beautiful night. It is. You happy? Martha smiled. I am. And she was. Not in some perfect fairy tale way. Life was still hard sometimes. There were still days when the doubt crept in, when she questioned herself, when she felt small. But those days were fewer now. And when they came, she had Caleb. She had herself. And she had the knowledge that being seen wasn't about being perfect. It was about being real. And she was real. Flawed and scared and trying, but real. And that was more than enough. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, Martha leaned her head on Caleb's shoulder and thought about the woman she used to be. The one who believed she'd never be chosen. That woman had been wrong. Not because Caleb had chosen her, though he had, but because she'd finally chosen herself. And in doing so, she'd discovered the truth she'd been searching for all along. She was never invisible. She'd just been waiting for someone strong enough to see her. But the real strength hadn't come from him. It had come from her. From the moment she'd decided to stop hiding, to stop shrinking, to stop believing the story everyone else had told her about who she was. And now, sitting on the porch of the life she'd built, Martha understood what it meant to be seen. It meant seeing yourself first. It meant believing you were worth the space you took up. It meant choosing to be brave, even when, especially when, you were terrified. And it meant understanding that you didn't need anyone else to validate your worth. You just needed to believe in it yourself. That was the lesson Martha had learned, the one she'd carry with her for the rest of her life. And as the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, she held Caleb's hand and smiled, knowing that she was exactly where she was meant to be. Not because someone had finally seen her, but because she'd finally seen herself.